Hello and welcome to the 84 Million podcast. Today we have as our guest Kerry Washington. We're glad to have Kerry with us here today. A little bit about Kerry. He's a U.S. Army veteran and he spent 20 years in Silicon Valley. He joined the Litecoin Foundation in 2017 as the general manager of Litewallet, the foundation's official mobile wallet. Based in London, Kerry manages the team across 5 time zones. He can be found on X at Big Kerry Tweets. And of course, Litewallet can be found at Litewallet_app. So Kerry, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Like I said earlier, we're trying to get the word out on all the good things we're doing these days. So it's good to be on these podcasts. So thank you.
Yeah, glad to have you on the podcast. We've thought about it for a little while and we were reminded recently, and thankfully we got it together pretty quickly. So we're glad to have you here. So we're here to talk about Litewallet primarily. And before we dive in though, can you tell us a little bit about your discovery of Litecoin and maybe how you joined the foundation?
Sure. I'm like you mentioned, I was at Silicon Valley for say 20 years, and there's a street or a highway. We have these highways that they're not quite freeways, they're not quite streets. They have billboards, and I would drive by this one on the way to go to work, and it was the most hideous looking thing. It was, get off of the finance highway and get on Bitcoin, right? Turns out this is, Charlie told me this is Eric Voorhees' first design that he put out there for people to get it. And I ignored that billboard for a good 5 years. Paid no attention to it. And I don't know what I was doing some research. I was reading about, I guess, the seed ceremony to actually get the seed and how people were going through this process of making sure that the entropy was correct and everything like that. And you mentioned I'm ex-military. I was a reservist. I was never shot at, right? But all that stuff is irrelevant. Most folks in the military just are making sure they don't get run over by a tank, right? And so, and I was in Signal, which in Signal we deal with crypto, and we deal with security, and so a lot of the themes are very similar in the crypto space. And so when I heard about that, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And I think I read I think it was Mitnick. He had been discovered on doing, he basically had dug into this, I think some government agency. And I was just like, oh, this really, and around that time, Bitcoin was popping up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I said, oh, okay, I'd heard of it, but I wasn't really interested. And a really good friend of mine that I went to business school, he was in Singapore, and he was like, oh, this guy wants you to write an app, but he's going to pay you in Bitcoin, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's okay. Okay, that's fine. That's and it was not a lot of money, but I was like, I can do it. And as most typical Bitcoin guys, this is like 2015, right?
Yeah.
So Bitcoin was around 800, 900 US worth. And I've kids. My oldest was in uni at the time, and I was like, I got to pay for that. Yeah. So I will just, I'll do the work. And I was just basically taking it and selling it so I can pay for expenses. And I was like, yeah, okay, this is a good thing. And then I started actually doing the real research and reading about it and everything. And I was like, oh, okay, this is, I knew immediately it was a real deal. The problem is, the thing that turned me off a lot was a lot of folks in our space, we don't know how lucid they are. And so, a lot of that, even Antonopoulos, when he did one of his things, I was looking on YouTube, and it just came off wrong for me. So I just wasn't really paying attention to it. And I should have known better, but just like with Eric Voorhees' bill, I missed a lot of these signs early on. I could have been terribly wealthy, right? But I wasn't doing it. Mm-hmm. Because I was in Silicon Valley, and that's where you could do that sort of thing. Anyway, I was doing that, and my client kept saying, like, don't sell it. Don't sell your stuff. And every time he would pay me, I'd sell it because I like, hey, I'm not wealthy. I need to pay bills.
Yeah.
And then I did some research, and I got into Ethereum. I was like, wait a minute, I have enough skill sets to basically, I was doing systems engineering as well. So prior to doing mobile development, I was setting up video over IP systems and doing technical marketing for them. So usually what you have to do is you need to be competent enough to read the manual and realize how much you do or don't know. And a lot of that stuff lends itself to the crypto space because you need to know how to set up, basically networks and how to understand all that. So I was like, oh, wait, I know how to do all these things. So let me play around with it. Got into Ethereum because I said, oh, I like the idea of smart contracts and everything. And I really dug into it. I was like, wait a minute, this is for me, I thought it was BS because I don't have the resources to set up a proper node and basically to tear apart my house to make sure that, the sound and the heat and everything like that. So I got into that. Then I got into Cardano a little bit. And then I got into Litecoin. I was just reading into it. I was like, oh, Litecoin was around $4, maybe $1 at the time. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I bought a little bit of it. And then I saw, I think they had just opened the foundation. So Loshan and Charlie had started doing it. And I saw the repo for, at the time it was called LoFallet. Okay. And again, I've been doing iOS development for a really long time. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. So a couple of things happened at the same time. I applied. And they was like, yeah, you can come work on this. So I was like, okay, good. In Silicon Valley, it's people complain about it. There's this double-edged sword, right? If you're a mobile developer, like I've been a product manager, I've been tech marketing, all that stuff. But when you're a software developer, you're kind of like close to a god, right? Because you're getting paid all this money, right? Which was great. I was like, wow. I went from product manager to like just always having money, right? But the downside of that is, after a year and a half or something like that, if you go to a startup, the startup is going to fold pretty. I mean, I've known the best top candidates and they just get laid off, right?
I see, yeah.
Or or if you get into a bigger stage. And by the way, I had already been working at Apple.
Okay.
Right. So I was doing what's called a producer for iTunes, which basically I'm from Culver City. Culver City is a studio town.
I know Culver City, yes.
Yeah.
I was in Southern California for about 10 years.
Yeah. Okay, go. Yeah. So you get this DNA of just dealing with celebrities and dealing with entertainment folks and stuff like that. And I didn't realize like, oh, this is a skill set that's valuable. And especially when you're in Apple, I was dealing with Warner and Sony. So it was kind of like, I said, oh, okay, I can do all these things. It's great, but Apple doesn't pay. And that's when iPhone came out. So I'm probably rambling a little bit, but the point is, in Silicon Valley, you have all these other opportunities and stuff, but they're not necessarily stable.
Yeah.
I was kind of burnt out of that. And I said, let me do my own app because you couldn't do that. And so that's where I started the iOS development, the guy in 2015. Fast forward, I saw the LoFallet repo and I was like, oh, let me start working on that. They invited me, met Charlie at Stanford. He was doing a talk. And I just started fixing bugs, right? It had been around a little while. The app had been taken down for both the Play Store and the App Store a couple of times, right? And I had been working in mobile development long enough to say, like, I would love to put all these features in here, but like, we got to fix this. And it did a double benefit in that I was working for free for the first 3 years. I was doing that, but I was also working at startups. Excuse me. So it was kind of like I would work, I'd have the paycheck, and it was like, great. But my passion was to go and fix these things that I knew needed to be fixed, right? So fast forward back and forth, and over about I want to say year and a half or so, I said, oh, okay, I'm ready to start touching the Android code because it was problematic. Like it was like 2 stars or something like that. And I was lucky to have a guy from Morocco join the team. His name is Barry. And he and we started working that nice rhythm of just like, oh, let's fix and everything like that. And so that went on for a good 3 years or so.
Okay.
But if you well know, we basically we were just like saying keep the patient alive because there's so many issues with it.
Okay.
And so that was a state, but then I started saying, well, okay, I went to B school in Santa Clara. I know the marketing that needs to be done. I know the investment that we need to put into it, but there was just never a case for doing that because the Litecoin Foundation just didn't have the budget for anything like that. So I was just happy that hey, we're getting more stars. We got from 2 to 3 stars. I'm like, oh, that's great. And um, and then another funny thing happened, which is when you start getting a more stable app, it attracts other people that want to work on it, right? So if you go to the website is actually litewallet.io, right? So you can see the team. We try to keep it the team board as fresh as possible, but I've recruited a couple of folks there, but the reality is because the code was open source and people could go see it, and so they can go reach out to us. And because the rankings started going up, and we started saying, "Hey, we need a data analyst. We need Android." We started putting it out there, and I said, "Oh," and we got closer and closer to the space that I was used to, that I had been doing before. And I want to say we're now there, right? In other words, the crypto space is great because you can just go do whatever you want, but you can't, right? There's still some fundamental organizational stuff that you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of folks believe that like, oh, it's crypto anarchy is great. And it's like, no, like if you really want to manage a mobile app, there are certain things you have to do. You have to do releases. You have to do all these sorts of things that are not fun.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I'd been doing that for a long time. I want to say this year is the first year where like we can actually apply our skill set and our experience. And now my team is big enough now that we can actually do that.
Very, very good. Appreciate that kind of background here. You mentioned
Mm-hmm.
before, and we'll go a little bit more with that, and then we'll talk maybe
Mm-hmm.
more into present details, and then, of course, maybe some announcements at the end. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you talked about kind of initially you started with, I guess it was you and Barry in
Mm-hmm.
casual mode,
Mm-hmm.
and you did you've already referenced this idea of a loaf wallet. What was loaf wallet? Was that the Litecoin official wallet? Was it a Bitcoin wallet that you ported to Litecoin? Tell us about the loaf wallet and how that became Lite Wallet.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, and I think a lot of people get a little bit too wrapped up into that. Loshan did the fork, right? So uh, there was a company called Bread, now called BRD, and I think they're defunct right now. But they basically had a Bitcoin wallet, and Loshan forked that
Mm-hmm.
for all of the. So and I'm very annoying and boring about this stuff.
That's okay.
A lot of people think that mobile people think that mobile apps are front end. They're not, right? Mobile apps are a fully encased entity, right? You have the interface. You may have an interface to a server. You might have a local server on there. Turns out that there's a library inside LiteWallet, which is using something called Loaf Wallet Core. And so Loshan had basically forked that and made changes to that for Litecoin. He'd also made the changes from Bread Wallet, and he called it Loaf Wallet. And so, it was functional, but there was a lot of things as a marketing and product guy, and me knowing as a mobile guy. The first thing, like, it seems like, well, why would you call it Light Wallet instead of Loaf Wallet? And a lot of people for years actually complained. They said, "Oh, I like Loaf Wallet better."
Mm-hmm.
Right?
There's always going to be that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So turns out, as we started getting more and more stable and got more stars, we got more people trying to copy, right? And in the early days, we had this blue Litecoin coin that was our logo, so that was in the app.
Mm-hmm.
And then by then, like I was playing a little bit more with Android, and the Android in the Play Store, they don't really manage it. They don't curate competitors or people that are cloning you. So you would go in there and you would have like 30 wallets. They would all have a Litecoin L on them. They would call them like this or whatever. And I said, yeah, that's not good.
Yeah.
And we were also doing when Barry and I were the only ones doing it. I don't know why we did this. It was crazy, but he suggested like, hey, let's do Zendesk, which is a support thing. And at the time, like he did some work and we were able to pay him, but like for the most part, we didn't have a budget. But I agreed with him. I was like, we need to have a support portal where real people are responding. And the main reason was because people were confused about what we were producing and what they were. So people would download the wrong thing, come back to us or send an email,
Hmm.
nastygrams, and say like, "Oh, I mean, I literally have an email right now. I need to respond." But people think that, "Oh, how can you do this?" So we are constantly working really hard. So I want to say right now it's a little bit it's even a little bit more even than before, but for the first 4 or 5 years, I was like put money into support, make
Hmm.
sure that we have people handling these things because our goal is to get people that are not tech savvy to understand how it works, which means you need the people that handhold people through. So low fall it was just it had to go. It was too easy for people to confuse. One is marketing wise, I can't really pitch it,
Right. Right.
right? And I understand it came from bread, but so we basically trademarked Light Wallet, and the idea is like we can do takedowns now, right? Now we can keep people from doing, and it's within the mission. If we as Litecoin Foundation are trying to share with people how Litecoin, what the benefits are, right? We need to not have to have the distraction of other people coming in and saying, and it's I'm touch wood,
Yeah. Yeah.
like we're doing better now, but on the first days it was really difficult because people just they didn't understand the concept and they thought and we're like, no, it's a free wallet, you can use it, but let's get the four wheels on the ground working properly. So yeah, that was the main thing. It's just it was such a big problem at the time, and I know people complain and the name, but I'm like, but at the end of the day, like it's easy to pitch Light Wallet.
Yeah.
It's
Light
a,
Light Wallet makes a lot of sense. I've heard of Loaf and Bread, and that was before I
mm,
was using it. The first Light Wallet I had was Light Wallet, as currently
mm,
branded. And but I'm interested in the history always, especially when we get folks
mm,
like you on the show that have been involved since the
mm,
beginning. It's good for the community, kind of for the historians among us to kind of know what happened before. But it
mm,
makes total sense, just as a person using it. And by the way, that's amazing you have support, because I think
mm.
I assume no one has any support in crypto
Yeah.
unless you're on like
Y-
Coinbase or some major exchange. Of course, they've got support, but wallets, I usually don't think of there's really any. But
Exactly.
good news there is there are folks that do offer
We have
some support,
Claudia
and
and Patrick. Yeah,
yeah,
and I have not met either of them. They've been on the team for about 3 or 4 years.
yeah,
I'm gonna meet Patrick at the summit.
okay,
I'm really excited. It's amazing. So yeah, and people, it's funny. I used to have a subreddit for Light Wallet. I don't know if you've visited, and at first I was like, oh, this is a good place to work out issues for people, right?
mhm,
And what was happening is, and as you well know on Reddit, people would go and post an issue because I was like, it was just me and Barry, right? And then Barry left. So it was like, okay, how do I handle this? So Reddit was the easy way to go and hit people back. The problem is the history of the problems with Light Wallet were stacking up, right?
mhm,
That's the first thing. And that just doesn't look good, right? The second thing, the biggest thing is I want people that are really having an issue to actually take the time, the 5 minutes to actually go to the dashboard and say like, hey, I really have a problem.
mhm.
Here's the issue. You don't have to give me your name, but you need to tell me like what's the problem, right? And Reddit is too easy for people. One, there's bots there. Two, there's too many people to go and complain. And I didn't see it was a good look for an app that really is still in its early stages, right? We don't have the kind of money like a Trust Wallet or, Edge or anything. We don't have that kind of money. So the last thing I want to do is make it seem like, oh, look at the history of all these bad things. I'm like, yeah, all wallets, all software has bugs. That's the way it is, right? The best you can do, what you mentioned, is do you have a team that's actually trying to help people work through those problems, right? And we're really committed to that. I go and answer tickets from time to time. I'm like I said, I'm very fortunate that I have Claudia and Patrick that are handling the bulk of the work. And if things are really bad, I'm like, please give them to me because I'm an engineer, so I've just, I can only do so much, and then I just let people have it. So I have other people dealing with it, but they are real people, right? And I even encourage them, actually, believe it or not, in this age of generative AI, I encourage them to use generative AI so that they can understand the difference between what they could provide for the users and what that can do for her. And Claudia is really good at this. She's actually in Seville in Spain.
Okay.
So she's her English is fine as far as I'm concerned, but she's like, well, I use ChatGPT and Gemini so that I know my responses. I'm like, good, like that's great, so.
You presented the Light Wallet. Of course, you're presenting it today. You've been at conferences, summits in Prague. You're at the Proof of Work Summit. You've represented Light Wallet. What's sort of your TLDR? If no one knows anything about it, what do you like about Light Wallet and what Light Wallet is doing versus, for example, all the other Litecoin wallets out there?
Sure. I mean, I would say my goal and our mission is to make it as easy as possible for people that are not in the crypto space to use it, right? And we want daily users, and we have a lot of daily users, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is we have a very big challenge in that we have no intention of adding other coins to Light Wallet. It's all Litecoin, which means, as far as I know, there's no other Litecoin only wallets. There's others that have I have Bitcoin. That's great. The reality is, because we're just doing Litecoin, we have to keep focus and make sure that we serve our customers in that realm. And we really believe that it's good. Obviously, when I'm coding and I'm doing testing and stuff, I've got a bunch of devices here and I'm sending Litecoin to myself. And I'm as giddy as I was the first time because I know it works really well and it's really affordable. And it's amazing to me. So when I tell people that, I can't be too excited because they may think, oh, you're just a nerd and that's your thing. But I want them to understand like what it means to other people that are outside the U.S. Right? Well, you're in the U.S. I'm from the U.S. We're very lucky. The reality is, our core audience are people that have they're in a locale where their currency is not very good, right? The other thing as Americans that we take for granted, but I know living in Europe now and going overseas, I've done a lot of work in Asia as well. People normally go to the market every day, right? They go and they buy their fruit, they buy their vegetables and all that stuff. They buy flour, and so the vendors will actually change the price according to what's going on. So if you remember, there was like the bread riots in Tunisia and everything like that, and it went across. It was because basically there was turmoil across the whole Middle East. So the price of people that actually eat, it really affected people. Unfortunately, our number one region outside the U.S. is Russia, right? Because of the invasion. So we have Russians, we have folks from Ukraine, Poland, Turkey, all these countries where their currency is weak. People love Light Wallet because they're like, I know it'll work, right? I've got people on the support channel who say like, oh, I have like 50 transactions on I'm like, oh, right. As users, as US guys, we're like, oh, why no, but for people, they need to use it every day. That's great. So that's something that we internalize when we're doing new features and everything like that, because we just don't have that experience. As much as I've traveled all over the world, people that are dealing with that and need to feed their family and use it, and they love Lightwell for that, it's very satisfying that people are using it, and they'll give us stars about it. So I'm happy about that.
I think that's terrific, and I think that shows a very contrasting idea of what this is all about. I know in the old days they're saying, you can buy coffee with your Bitcoin or buy coffee with your Litecoin. I'd argue no one's buying coffee with Bitcoin now. You can buy coffee with Litecoin. And in these environments you're describing, people are using it as money at point of sale to buy goods and services that they need for their life, and like that's what money is supposed to be.
It's supposed to be that.
It's not a speculative number go up sort of holding, not saying that there's not a place in the world for that, but what Litecoin is doing now is what Bitcoin initially aimed at doing, and I think is big time failing for various reasons. And this isn't to diminish Bitcoin. I think it's an important monetary force in the world, but it's not what it was set up to be. And we have to admit it's very different now than it was. And
it's a different,
when the white paper was released. But that's excellent that people are using it as money. They can use Litecoin as money, and they're using Litecoin as money in your Litewallet setting. And that they know not only does the current currency work, but your platform clearly is serving them too. So that's terrific. What about, well, I guess it's, I want to say one of your slides before, I saw a lot of maybe West African heat maps and a lot in Europe. I've seen some of your screenshots over time, and it is maybe surprising to someone in America or North America or whatever, because we tend to be isolated. We think of ourselves and kind of our markets and our economy. But that these things are being used as money in these other places, I just think is a big testament to Litecoin, and also to what you're doing to set up a great app that the world can actually use. So,
yeah, it's a big deal. And just to add on to that, so I think when I started, I think we had like 16 languages in the app, and we cut some out, like some Scandi languages. We just don't have that many users, so we cut some of those out. But then again, because just time changed, and we said, like we added Ukraine like 3 years ago when right around the invasion. I looked at it, I said, like, duh. Ex-military, I was taught the Soviet doctrine, right? Like I was like, yeah, we're gonna do this like now, right? There's just no question about that. Turkey, because of what's going on in Turkey, and all that kind of, I'm really into politics and what's going on globally, and it just kind of informs the decision making on what we're going to do. And the reality is you only have so much bandwidth to add languages. There's Google Translate, and you can do a lot of cool stuff where you can put all of them in there, but the reality is you need to support it, right? So we're really cautious to add new languages, but the same token, we want people that are actually using the app. Like obviously there's New World Spanish, there's Old World Spanish, there's Portuguese. And like we still look at that stuff and see how can we make it better for people so that they don't have to really take too many steps to understand how to use it.
Very good. I mean, if we look at BitPay, another brand, but we brought it up on the podcast before, and I think everybody's aware of what's going on with BitPay. Is after the gate was open to Litecoin over the past year, I mean, it's gone.
It's
from,
crazy.
Second tier, third tier to absolutely number one, and there's no signs of it stopping. So people are choosing Litecoin as their money in terms of cryptocurrency money. And it's obvious, and it's becoming more obvious. So are you seeing similar things with the use of your, the stats that you see for Litewallet? Are you seeing now, like you're just seeing way more demand than, for example, 2017? I would think so, but maybe you can share some of that growth.
Sure. We are, I would say, okay, so I want to talk about BitPay as well. And we can't deny the fact that people have grudges, right? And the reality is Litecoin was not on the platform because I think the CEO at the time just didn't believe in it. And when he left, that happened. And I always was paying attention to that, and I was really excited about it.
Yeah.
But by the same token, while we were getting that BitPay in there, I have this, and by the way, just to add, since I was in Silicon Valley and Charlie was in Silicon Valley, I was really lucky. So we cultivated just working together. Like every month we'd have lunch
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It was great. Like it was a lot of fun, and I knew a lot of people in the area. So one of my pet projects that I really want to do is either a node built into a point of sale, right? So I had a VP of marketing at Clover, and I tried to get a meeting with that. It didn't. It fell through because my friend's like, oh, by the way, Wells Fargo owns a controlling share of Clover, so they're probably never going to do.
Mhm.
Even though they have the device itself could do it,
Yeah.
but they weren't going to do it. So Charlie was like, yeah, let's do it. And so my point is, what I really wanted to do, and what I think it's hopefully it'll work really soon, is having a really good interface for people to actually find brick and mortar places that are doing Litecoin transactions. And I'm surprised it's taken this long. We still don't have. We have a partner that we've advertised, Crypt Work, and
Okay.
they have a map and they have services and stuff. But the problem is usually like Google Maps and Apple Maps, they're stale, right? So you don't really know. You don't want to drive, 50 miles and then show up and the place is out of business, right? So,
Yeah.
but I would love for that to happen. For in the meantime, we have to rely on like a lot of Eastern European countries where a lot of the traction is,
Hmm.
and we are seeing an increase. Ironically enough, and this is funny. I know people are gonna kick me for saying this. When we added service fees, we actually got more users.
Yeah.
And people were complaining, "Oh, it should." I'm like, no, you don't get it. And I explained to them, guys, I've been doing this 7 years, almost 8 years. Um, I didn't get paid for 3 years. My pay now is very modest.
Hmm.
I said, the Litecoin Foundation and Charlie have been funding Litewallet for 7 years,
Yeah.
right? So
Wow.
even though it's
Yeah.
been free,
Hmm.
right, you've been using it, and you're like, oh, it's free. I'm like, no, it's not free. They just paid for all the development. They paid for all, the different projects we had to do, all the marketing, fly me out, all that stuff. They were paying for that. And now we're saying, no, you got to pay, a penny to $3, depending on how, and even after like $1,000 worth of Litecoin, we don't care, right? But the point is, we need to fund the development. We can't have the Litecoin Foundation and Charlie foot the bill
Yeah.
all the time. And what's happened is, I think we've done some adjustments in terms of the scale, but I think people value using it now, right? Before they had all this cool thing, I can throw it away. Usually people will have Litecoin on there.
Hmm.
They throw their 12 words away and they're like, oh, give me my 12 words. I waited, sorry,
Yeah.
Now when they're sending and they're paying, they take it way more seriously. So we are seeing an increase, right? I think the other thing at the same time is one of my teammates, Anta, he reached out to me like 5 years ago, and I saw his portfolio. So he's a creative director of this company called Profico, and he's amazing. He's really soft-spoken guy and everything. And he's like, "Oh, I want to work on this." And I was like, "Okay, that's cool." And this is, like I said, it was about 5 years ago. And over time, I would just have a meeting with him, and he's like, "Hey, Kerry, what about this? What about th-" And I'm just like taking notes. I'm like, "Yeah, let's do this," because his company does uh, website design and mobile app design, right? And I just felt like looking at their stuff. If you ever check them out, you're like, "Oh, they're really good," right? They're in Croatia. I was like, "Yeah, okay. Well, I'm glad that you looked down upon us and gave us some expertise and everything." But then he kicked it up a notch and said, like, "Hey, let's do a deal. You have to pay for it, but we're gonna do uh, marketing outreach, right? We're gonna help do the UI UX."
Hmm.
And that's been a big reason. And in fact, so Claudia has two roles. She's been doing support, and she was also doing the marketing outreach of socials. And she was doing like 5 posts a week. I mean, I don't know why. She's got another job. She was incredible. And my marketing team said, "Hey, let's kick it down a notch. Let's just do like 2 a week, but we're actually going to do this properly." Like, so we have a Kanban. We look and we check everything. We check the copywriting. We have all that stuff. It's a whole nother job, but because it's good and because they know what they're doing, right? And all we're doing is saying, if you check us on Instagram, or when you see that stuff there, it's, it's not, we're not crazy, but we're just trying to get the message out there more consistently. And I think people resonate to that quite well. And so I think those two things have been really good. And it made me feel confident enough to go say like, okay, we're going to do like 3 shows this year. And the idea is like, we have to do it right now because we're doing this outreach. And if we don't support it, it's kind of stupid.
Yeah, marketing, getting the word out. Yeah, it is important. These are ideas and they've got to spread. So interesting stuff. I want to move to the wallet itself. Just kind of what does the user see when they're in Litewallet, if they're getting it on Android or iOS. So I have Litewallet. I think the interface is aesthetically very beautiful. It's very pleasing to look at.
You're too kind.
The experience is very simple. I haven't seen the older iterations. I can't speak to those, but the current state of things, let's say the past year or two. I actually didn't use mobile on purpose for a long time. This is a side note, just because there's security issues. But I also realized it's like, because it's not, cold storage and all these other things we know about in the space, but it's like, to use it transactionally in this environment, especially if you're going to go out and about, you have to have mobile. So it's a big part of it. It's a big part of it. As using Litecoin as money, it's got to be on mobile. So I kind of changed my mind a little while ago on that. I should say a few years now, I guess. But initially I would do, nope, dedicated machine only, period, end of story. So that's changed now. But the Litewallet looks great. It's easy to use. I know you can buy Litecoin within it, which is pretty nice for those that may have zero exposure to Litecoin or any exchanges or ATMs nearby, or however you're getting your Litecoin. That seems pretty neat. I know at one point it supported the Litecoin block card, which sadly no longer exists. Hopefully we'll have another one of those in the future, because that was super cool. I still have it. It doesn't work, but it's more like a souvenir from something that was. But you've added these neat features into your platform. What do you like about these integrations? Are there any more integrations like this that are coming? Not necessarily MWEB, but just how your wallet is set up, how you've designed it, and how you'd like us to experience it. I personally think it works very well.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. If I'm no good if I'm not honest with myself, and again, it's a team effort, but the reality is I've been very frustrated with the interface for a very long time. I come from a family of designers, and the most difficult thing for me is to sit there and work on bugs and features and not fix other stuff, right? And if you go into Reddit, or if you go into any of these in Twitter, and people say, well, why don't you do this and we'll add these features? I'm like, we have 8-year-old code with a color scheme that's it's okay. It works. I'm glad that it works. But I want to say about 2-3 years ago, like I said, when Ante joined the team, I was like, oh, I know what I want to do. I don't know we're going to get there, right? So we have a major effort going on right now to actually reskin the whole thing.
Okay,
right?
Interesting.
And what that means is, it's great that it's simple. We want it to be simple and easy to use. We want people that are not tech savvy to be able to get it, but we also want to, I don't know. I think if you know Peanuts at all, right, you would see they would make jokes, and as a kid you would get the joke, but as an adult you would really get the joke, right? And that's kind of what we want in the interface. We want it to be really simple. So if you don't know anything, you just know how to do ABC. It's simple. The learning curve is really shallow. You don't have to go that far. But if you're really into tech, we want to have all those other things in the interface so that you can go and dig deep. And I think the method that we're working on is, a lot of wallets put a lot of content and a lot of complexity into the wallet, and that's great in the space, but the functional reality is we're only dealing with Litecoin, right? So we have our set of parameters is fairly small. And then the other thing is, like, people are scared for that.
Mhm.
If you put too much stuff in there, they're just not going to do it, right? So I'm very careful to see, like, when people download the app, we're trying to get them to use it as quickly as possible with this. They don't have to spend a lot of money, but I want them to like download it, use it, because once you start playing around and using it, you say like, oh, there's a bunch of different things I can do this with, right? But if you have to go through, I'm including my family, right? So I've got a brother. He's in actually in Hollywood. So getting him to sit there and like pay attention to what I say it's a big challenge, right? But if I can get him to do that, then I figure anyone will do it, right? And so the point is, we try to keep it as straightforward as possible. But with this new refresh, we want to get all that other stuff in it. Um, and I wanted to talk a little bit about MWEB because that's what everyone asks about.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know if you're on the Telegram, but we have Newborn. Have you heard of Newborn? Have you played around with it or?
Not familiar with it.
Right. So like 3 years ago, I would have my meetings with Charlie and like, Charlie, when's MWeb going to be ready for mobile? And he's like, not yet. Like, it was like a joke, like, not yet, not yet. And then finally, I want to say, what was it, about 7, 8 months ago, he's like, okay, Kerry, go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, if I'm able to do anything, I was able to. I talked to David a bunch of times. I'll be honest, like I'm not a blockchain engineer, right? I can read the code, I can see what's going on, but I don't understand. I don't grok everything at the high level because that's just not my space, right? I'm able to make sure that it works.
Mhm.
David, obviously, he did Mimblewimble, and so I talked to him about it, and I was like, yeah, I don't think I've wrapped my head about this entirely. And fortunately, he had been working with Hector
Mhm.
on some. I'm really weird, and I go into GitHub and I see all these comments and see people talking. And this is how you find people.
Yeah.
And so Hector had been talking with him, and so I said, "Hey, Hector, can you take a look at this?" And he's like, and then he's like, "No, I don't think so." Fast forward a couple of months, and he's like, "Oh, I have some time now, right?"
Mhm.
So we had about 3 different meetings where I was trying to beg him, basically, hey, can you please take the L&D library, which is the core, that's what we're using for MWeb, and modify it for us so that we can just test it, right? Not put it in Litewallet immediately, but just have it. He's like, yeah. So after a few months, he got it. And if you don't know, it's like a huge thing. Everyone's excited about it. Here's the problem, and it's a big problem. People seem to forget this. It's people's money,
Mhm.
right? You put something out there that's kind of not like, one guy worked on it, it works, right? But there's so many corner cases of that could fail. And unfortunately, I'm the one that has to answer to that, right?
Mhm.
And so when people say like, oh, are you going to do it? I say, I'll tell you what, here's what we're going to do. We're going to test it. We're going to tell you guys it's hideous. It's alpha. You can test it, everything like that. But we're not going to put that into the light wallet until we know that it's certain, because we have too many users, daily users. I think it can go from 1,000 to 2,000 people. The last thing I want is people to like lose money, like not feed their family. Like I
Mhm.
lose sleep over that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That's a heavy
So
heavy thing to carry. Yeah.
it's a lot, yeah, and we already have enough to worry about, right? So I said, we're going to do that. We're going to do this for. We're going to take Hector's work, and so I guess David did the core work. He's like the advisor. Loshan worked on L&D, and then Hector basically made the changes. And we have a branch that's going into basically a copy of Lightwall, and we're calling it Newborn, right?
Okay.
And it's designed to be hideous, and so that you can't go and tell someone this is the same thing,
Mhm.
right? It is using mainnet, it's using real Litecoin,
Mhm.
but the idea is I want it to be as close to what we want it to be in production. So if anything blows up, it's going to be a really small group of people, and they already know what they're getting into, right?
Yeah.
So we did that in, I want to say, March. So we have it for Android and for iOS. And I went into the Telegram and people are like, oh yeah, well, when are you going to put in a light wallet? I'm like, hey, go use Newborn, right? Not only is it there and people are using it, but there's no service fees. People are complaining about service fees. There's no service fees in Newborn. Go use it, right?
Yeah.
And as a technologist, I want people to test it. I want them to break it, right? I want them to say like, hey, this is wrong. And I'd rather have, you know, 8 people a day, which is what we have for Newborn, versus 2,000. I want to hear that now. And so that's really the reasoning behind the kind of slow rollout. It's just we've had things where like we had a button that broke, right? I think it was like a donation was covering another button, and so like people couldn't send, right? We still have little bugs in there that we try to fix, but the reality is like you can't fix everything. So the last thing I want to do is put something in there that's going to like kill people's wallet, right? It's a heavy burden, right? So I hope people understand that. It's not about like, oh, we don't want to put, no, we want it out there, but we want it to be bulletproof or at least close to it, right? So that more people can enjoy it.
I think that sounds prudent. And of course, Litecoin has a wonderful history. We like the meme of 100% uptime. So everything Litecoin's done so far has been very good and
Right.
maybe slow, but hey, the thing works. And so I think that makes sense. I wasn't aware of Newborn. Is it the same? I should say, I'll say this. We've seen the screenshots and it looks a lot like a Litewallet. So that's why I'm thinking, oh, it's coming, it's testing. We knew testing is happening. And yes, we are waiting for it to be integrated into Litewallet as a first, mobile wallet to support MWEB transactions on Litecoin, which is major. And for those that may be tuning in for the first time, or maybe you're not a Litecoiner, somebody shared this with you. The Mimblewimble extension block upgrade activated in May 2022. It's the largest, most significant upgrade that Litecoin has ever had, and probably the clearest departure from Bitcoin, because of course Litecoin and Bitcoin are twins. Litecoin being a twin of Bitcoin. That was the biggest departure from Bitcoin as its own entity, because Bitcoin has nothing like this, at least now. So it's huge. It was a major development. It's been around for a few years now. It works wonderfully, but it's only in the core environment. So if you download a Litecoin node on your desktop PC, whatever, Linux, you can get it there, but there's nothing on mobile. So hearing about Newborn, admittedly, I don't have Telegram. People have told me about it. I'm like, there's already too much social media in my life. Maybe I need to get Telegram. Yesterday, Vlad Kostea, who, by the way, I think worked for you at one point on this, was saying,
no,
where's
he didn't
your
work
Telegram?
for me, but he was one of my key.
Was he a tester?
Well, no, I think he had reached out. I don't know how I got in touch with him, but he was, good testers because they ask questions that as a developer, you never ask, right? And he and I were talking and I was like, oh, dude, thank you so much. This was years ago. And he was just like, well, I tried to do this and that didn't work. I was like, oh, and we kind of cultivated a relationship where like he could tell me, hey, this is broken. And I loved it, right? I'm just a weirdo in terms of as an engineer, but I'm like, I need people to give me clear-eyed feedback about what's going on. That's the only way I can actually do it. And the reality is most people don't understand that mobile is really hard to reproduce the bugs because the different environments that these people are working in, mainly it's because even the broadband environment is a big part of it, right? Our biggest thing that we tell people when it's not working is like, hey, go to the coffee shop or go to some other IP environment because it's usually someone's blocked the ports for Litecoin, and then it fixes it, and then they don't come back and say yeah they fix it. But that's funny. People think, oh, that's no big deal. I know, but you've been doing this for a long time. These folks, they were getting Litecoin. And they're like, how come it doesn't work? And it's like, well, because your server at your house is not very good, right? You can't tell them that. You're just like, oh, go to the coffee shop or go to a different place. So
I'm looking up Newborn now. Is this searchable?
Well, here's the thing. So we didn't want it to be a production level thing. So you have to be in test flight for the iOS, or it needs to be a beta thing. I will give you links. I put links out there. We put it in social and everything like that. But it's ironic that the amount of fervor people doing MWEB, and I'm like, hey, we put it out there, but somehow people are missing it. So, but by the same token, I don't want people to think, oh, we're going to go to Newborn. Newborn is meant to be ugly and like an alpha app. And so I don't want people to say like, oh, how come it, like a lot of people, the feedback was like, well, this button doesn't work. And it's like, no, just do MWEB transactions, right? We forked from like March, and we've already done a lot of changes from Litewallet since then. The idea is we want to have a nice test matrix of things that are happening so that when we turn things on, we kind of can expect, because at the end of the day, I'm still kind of the lead developer. I have a really good engineer in Indonesia, and she's really good. Her name's Josie. She's great, but it's just the two of us doing the coding, right? And occasionally I'll bring in contractors to work on different stuff. Like Hector, basically, we made sure that he got paid to help do this stuff so that we can do it. But we only have so many, we just have two hands, right? We can only do so much. So
yeah, very good. I knew something was going on in Telegram. Again, I didn't, and that sounds like where this was released. I would be comfortable to share some links if you would provide them in show notes for people.
That. Yes, that'd be great.
Jump in. So it sounds like you've set that up kind of as a sandbox for people to use it, to prove the problems, to make sure it's stable. But it sounds like it's actually real. This isn't testnet. These are real transactions.
These are, it's mainnet. And that's what I was going to say without sounding too bitter, is people were really upset that like, oh, you didn't put it in Litewallet. And I'm like, no, you have Newborn. So Newborn has been available for a few months. But again, for me, I wanted to have, 100 users a day. We get like 8. It's tiny. And the problem is we've got a chicken and egg situation. We don't have a lot of nodes that have MWEB turned on, right? So I think their connectivity is poor, right? But then again, we don't have enough users to say like, hey, how come there's no node, right? That does this. And so, people that have to think about this problem for a lot realize like we have to creep, and we have to encourage people to make sure the MWEB is on. I think it's like 20% of nodes have it, but you don't know where those are. So they might not be, the hop might be too much. So they might not be able to do it well. So there's a little bit of time that because the last thing I want is to roll it out and people say, "Ooh, I want to use MWEB," and then it's a poor experience compared to mainnet, SegWit, right? That like there's no reason for that, right? Let's make sure that everything is working well, and we push. And if we can push the miners and other people that are managing nodes to say like, hey, we definitely have MWEB, and great, that's good. So,
pardon me, I sneezed. I did mute it though.
No, it's okay.
Well, that's amazing. I don't think many people know about it, and it sounds like your traffic is pretty low. But I like what you're doing with this, and that's actually, I guess we're further along than I thought we were. So how much longer do you think, and maybe you can't answer this, how much more time do you think you need before it does get to that point where you're saying, this is safe, this is good, we're going to roll it out in Litewallet?
Yeah, so... everyone's asking this question.
I've got to.
I think. What's that?
I've got to.
And that's fine. I'll tell you. Here's how we're going to do this, and I can say for sure. I would say the number one problem people have with current production level Litewallet is the sync time is abhorrent. It's really bad. People hate it. It turns a lot of people off. Fortunately, the library for MWEB is a lot quicker in terms of syncing, right? So we want to get that in there as soon as possible. It's no MWEB, but it's using more recent technology that these guys worked on to actually make it a much better experience for people to sync. Because once we can get the syncing down to something that's like trivial, then we can push more and say like, okay, get more people to use it. Because the more people we have using it, the more likely that we'll have nodes that have MWEB. So it'll be more covered, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is, and Vlad, I don't think Vlad realizes, because I have jet lag. I just came back from LA, and I don't know what time it is, or even what city, but yeah, we were chatting, like he's in Romania, and we were chatting. He's like, oh, I tried to do this thing, and so he actually found I think a critical bug. And so I talked to Charlie about this. I'm like, yeah, this is actually a big deal. So if you have 100 people a day using an app, the bugs show up. You can see them, right? If you have one guy in Romania that, he's the only one doing it, it takes 4 months to get the bug,
For
right?
sure. Yeah.
That's just the way it works. So if you see, you'll see me jumping up and down, like in Telegram, like, you guys, quit complaining, go use it, right? You have people complaining about, oh, Litewallet this. I'm like, are you actually using it, right? If you're using it, great. I'll take that feedback. But if you're not using it, you're just talking about a theory of it, and you're not using MWEB, I can't listen to you at all.
Yeah.
Right. I have to listen to people that are actually going to use it, because the number one thing, and I would say the thing if I'm a Apple fanboy and I'm a product guy, I listen to the users as much as I can, try to internalize that and try to put it into the product. And if I don't have real users, it's hard for me to say what the most important thing. I would just say the sync is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
We need to fix this. We tried to do it. Actually, I had a contractor look at it, because it's a C library, like I said, that's 8 years ago. And he's like, yeah, there's no way to fix this, because it's from 8 years ago, when memory management was a different thing now and so I'm like, oh yeah, okay. That did it for me. I'm like, okay, we have to do this as soon as possible. I want to say that we can get it out around the summit, but fortunately or unfortunately, Apple basically sucked the wind out of me for the last, for like 4 weeks. They basically rejected the app. And it was a big issue. And so, because I couldn't code and I had to respond to all their stuff, they basically were saying, well, you can't have a partner in the app, because and even though for the last 4 years they've been okay with it, so they changed their mind about it. And yeah, so anyway, the point is, like, I'm behind because I haven't been able to actually go and push things along, but there's reasons for it. It's not because I guarantee you I should be sleeping more than I do. So.
Here, we appreciate your work, and we're confident and optimistic when it does roll out. I think in the meantime, this being a part of the testing is good. And I'd ask, after we're done here, for the Telegram group link and the newborn link, if we could share that at least with the folks here. But MWEB is huge. I think it's going to change a lot for the mobile environment.
I love it. Yeah.
What do you see coming with MWEB after it's fully functioning? How do you see Litewallet being used, or your patterns of stats changed?
I feel like, so there's the crypto anarchists that they want to protect their privacy, and I think that's great. But I feel like, the most important thing is, I use the analogy of, like, if you go to Baskin Robbins, or you go any ice cream store and you want to go buy your ice cream, you take your 5 or now it's a 10 and you pay, and you may open your wallet, but for the most part, they don't know how much money you have in there, right?
Right.
And Bitcoin and Litecoin and Litewallet and any wallet, when you pay, they can see everything in there, right? That's the analogy I use for people that don't understand crypto. So I say, like, MWEB is like, hey, I just gave you the $5.50. Please give me my ice cream, right? It's huge, right? So we're looking at doing some other stuff to make the message a lot more streamlined, so that people, again, you and I, we understand how this works. We know it's wonderful. I love MWEB. I have to do payments. I have to pay for things and everything. So MWEB is great for that, right? It's really, really good. But I want to show it to people that don't have to sit in front of their computer with 3 screens, right? I want people that are like, hey, why do I care about this? And so that's the biggest thing. So we're working on some things that we think is going to make it more resonant for people outside of the normal crypto space. And I think when you do that, right, when you actually get people to get that elevator pitch to say like, oh, this is why Litecoin, this is why MWEB. If we can do that succinctly and in a really resonant way, oh my goodness. We're already seeing with BitPay, I think was a great step up for us, because it's kind of like acknowledgement that how important Litecoin is. But when we start getting regular people all over the world using it on a daily basis, it's going to be huge.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about it.
I think so too. And I've said this, and I think it's accurate. I think it's loosely accurate. It's that Litecoin is the largest cap privacy coin and no one knows about it. I know that the amount stored in MWEB, and you can go to an MWEB Explorer and see how many are locked up at any given moment, right? I understand that it's a very small portion of the total
amount,
the total Litecoin supply that currently exists today. But at the same token, I mean, we're talking about it. It's the same chain, so we can't divide these as two cryptocurrencies. They're not. Litecoin is Litecoin. Period. You're using the MWEB feature, or you're not. So whether or not there's let's say a small aspect of the clear Litecoin or the traditional Litecoin in the MWEB extension blocks, with the Mimblewimble extension blocks, it doesn't matter. The point is the feature's there for anybody if you have Core or when you're going to have Litewallet. And so I think that's a correct statement, because Litecoin is available essentially wherever Bitcoin is. It's going on 13 years old. It's available. If crypto's available, Litecoin's going to be there. It's almost like you have to have an intention not to include it at this point.
Yeah.
So that's why I say it's the largest cap, mostly liquid, largest privacy coin that no one knows about, because we don't know about MWEB yet. And I just think it's neat and kind of crazy, and we still don't really understand the implications of it. But I think practically it's wonderful just to have a transaction person to person and not share your entire bank account details in the traditional terms, right? I think we can help a little bit with that if we, do coin control and have a little bit at this address and a little bit at that address. That's more complex. But you can do some things to kind of guard you, but it's not great. It's transparent and there's benefits to transparency, but I think most transactions are not transparent. We expect some level of privacy. And I know Charlie's always said it's not perfect privacy. Don't commit crimes with this sort of thing. I mean, that's not the point. It's a basic function to encourage commerce and protect the person. And so you don't need to know how much I have. I don't have to know how much you have, but we know that we gave each other 5 Litecoin. So anyway,
yeah, it's operational security in the sense that like you're not that worried about it anymore, right? And I will add in here. So I think it's called MWEB Explorer, the website where you see all the stats.
Yep.
So very lucky. I reached out to the team there, and they actually gave us access to the API.
Oh, very good.
Which is going to be awesome. So the sneak peek is we're going to get those stats and put it inside of Litewallet when we do the rollout. So you'll be able to, you won't have to go to the website. You'll be able to look at it. And then we want to draw some more conclusions about what's going on, even within your region, over time, all that stuff. But I think we've got, and then I have another, he's a teammate. He's been very busy. He went to UCLA for a data analysis. He's got a master's. His name's Leon. He was on the team, then he's coming back in. And again, like Anta, he's one of these guys. I'm like, I can do some basic analysis, but he does full modeling of huge data sets. And one of the things we want to do when we start rolling this out is like saying, have a really solid answer to a question about the data, right? Because that's what he's really good at. So we're working on some really simple, mundane stuff right now, but at the end of the day, it's like, I think we're going to have a lot of bona fides, because like, look, we've got people that got masters in data analysis. We've got people that are doing this stuff for 5 years. I'm so lucky. I've got a really good team, even though I've never met most of them. So
we'll meet a few people this summer, so that's good news.
Yeah, for sure.
It's exciting, and it's crazy what can be done without actually meeting folks in real life. But we get to have these events every now and again, and so that should be exciting. Really I think it'll be a lot of good for our space too. we're still here. We're still trucking. We're still building. I mean, you're building things. I mean, I have a different
Mm-hmm.
platform. It's not a monetary platform, managing
Mm-hmm.
people's money. So that's like,
Mm-hmm.
again, that's a tall order. That's a heavy thing to carry, but you're doing it, and the building is important, and it will bring
Mm-hmm.
more and more and more, and you're already seeing that, right? So
Mm-hmm. Yep.
a few more questions I do have before maybe
Sure.
we land the plane on
Mm-hmm.
this episode, but it's been super. MWEB is kind of the elephant in the room, but Litewallet does more than this, and
Mm-hmm.
in fact, it doesn't do it at all yet. But there's so much there's so much there.
Mm-hmm.
But either
Mm-hmm.
way, I think we've touched on that very well, and we're
Okay.
anticipating its launch. What about? Do you foresee supporting or changing the interface, maybe with this reskin, or maybe not, to support other kind of non-monetary features of Litecoin, such as runes or ordinals or tokens, things like that? Is that the point, or are you more focused on Litecoin as a means of exchange, as a money? We're not really getting into NFTs and the other things you can build on the chain.
Yeah. So as a personal thing, again, I get 90% of commentary is people that want to add features to Litewallet, but they haven't really thought about the implications of it. And unfortunately, most engineers are kind of like, "Hey, I don't want this to blow up in my face." And so when we talk about ordinals, it's great that people want to do that stuff. And what I explain to people, and no one really, I'm happy. I love to argue with people about stuff, and it's not personal. We can disagree about stuff. I feel like ordinals we don't want the responsibility of making sure that the state of the ordinals inside your wallet are going to be, because then you lose value, right? So if you say you receive a transaction and you have that state, and then all of a sudden you send it out, they're going to blame us. We all. I'll just say another thing, just not without distracting it too much, but we in the Android, we used to have it for iOS, but we have a donation button in Android, right, for people to donate to the foundation. Great. We added it a few years ago. The first iteration of it, we had both, and Apple said, no, you can't do it. So we took it out. Then in Android, people were still, what people are doing is they would click on the button, they would put the thing, we would say, this is a donation to the foundation, right? And they would send it, right? So the first year or so, we had about 10, maybe 15 people that just weren't reading, including in their languages. There was no reason for them to do it, right? And so we said, okay, what are we going to do? So Patrick was like, oh, why don't we put another dialogue up? I was like, okay. So that's great. So now it's like 3 or 4 people a year. They read and they saw the dialogue. But I go through there. We do not want people to accidentally donate. We want people that want to donate to do it. But I know most people are not paying attention to that. People don't read, right? So we put that dialogue. And I think 2 years ago, we had a guy, he had sent $1,100 worth of Litecoin to the foundation. So what does that actually mean, right? These little things that you think are, oh, it's not a big deal. I had to verify that he was being honest, because he wasn't obviously he wasn't paying attention. I had to get Keith, our accountant, I had to get Charlie involved. The board and I say to them, and I say to my support people, and I'm not ashamed to say, I'm like, if they didn't have the time to sit there and read, and we gave them all these messages, right, they're going to have to wait. Right, because I have to go to Charlie and say, like, hey, Charlie, can you please sign off on this? In this case, a lot of money, right? It's a nightmare, right? And so, anytime we want to put new stuff in there, like we thought it was a great idea. And the other ironic thing about it is that kind of flatlines. Like, we don't get a whole lot of donations from that. It's good. It goes to the foundation, but like the payoff is low. Because now I have to get Charlie involved, I have to get Alan involved, all that stuff. It's a nightmare. And we put another feature in there where it say, like, okay, for the latest version, in order for you to donate, you need to have already sent some Litecoin somewhere, right? So now, like, you can't just accidentally do it. And of course, every single one of them are like, oh, you took my Litecoin, you tricked us. I'm like, speaking your language, I can, and I'll show them, hey, we told you what this was. It makes me upset because they're accusing my team that we're trying to scam. And that's definitely not what we're doing. No one on my team is getting rich being
Yeah.
on the team. Okay. It's just a headache and it's really, really bad. And so anytime we put a new feature in there, that we have to think about that, right? And especially if it's something where they think they're going to get really wealthy, right? Ordinals or NFTs, all that stuff. Like there's a responsibility when you publish an app, but like you need to take care of it. So that's why I'm very really against that stuff. And if we had accounts, we don't have accounts, right? So when you download, you write down your 12 words. We have no visibility to any of that stuff, right? So I can't even go back to you and say like, oh yeah, here's this thing, here are your NFTs, which most wallets they do that because they have accounts. They are actually not decentralized, right? You go through the user and then they have some keys or whatever like that. So it's a bigger step than I think people realize. It's not a trivial thing. And I think NFTs right now, from what I've been seeing, people are realizing like, oh, okay, it's really for the smart contract world, and it's really wealthy people that basically used it to launder. I mean, that's what they did, right? We know what was going on. So that's kind of my take on it. I think good stuff. Like one of the things that I people ask about, and I think is really, really important, is XPub key. So that people can actually go and generate the child keys themselves. That's a great feature. And we're going to add that another feature that we haven't been able to really handle, and we should do in the future, especially because of Ballet, is importing paper wallets. So originally the Loaf wallet had a feature for importing the wallet, but the reality is, I think there were a few WIF formats that it worked for, but those companies don't exist anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we need to. What I've done over the time is collected different types of paper wallets so that I can have like a matrix of things that we can respond to. Probably we would work with Ballet, Bobby Lee's company, because like I have plenty of
Yeah.
Ballet wallets all over.
Yeah. They're
I have
cool.
plenty of, yeah, and it's good. So we need to do that because it's a really easy path for people to go and to move money in and out of Light Wallet. So there are some features in there that are not there that should be, right? And they need to be really mundane, kind of basic stuff so that people are like, oh, they get it immediately. NFTs and ordinals they're so risky. Even in the best case scenario, you hear all these people are like, oh, you lost this and that. Like, that's the last thing I want, is to try to explain something that, honestly, we didn't have ownership of in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So
That's fine. I appreciate the response. In fact, I asked David Burkett in the first episode of this podcast. He sort of launched this whole thing about core ever upgrading, because that when I interviewed him, it was a year after MWEB, but it was right in the environment of ordinals just kicking in. And he basically said, no, they probably will never add it to core. And that's fine. Because I think, that's looking at it as the monetary component. By the way, you can use core for it, and there is coin control in it. And obviously there's no support, things like you provide, the Light Wallet, which I would imagine could be a nightmare. Sounds like it is to a degree with, I don't want to say that negatively. I think it's wonderful that you're doing it, but I know with even the 84 million platform, we have a shop and things like that. And, our traffic is, I would say very moderate, but it's still, there's only so many of us, right? And it's tough to follow up on all these things. So I can only imagine if you're, like I said, dealing with valued MST with the support system, you could open up for a lot there. So I think zeroing in on the money makes a lot of sense. And I think that is the primary purpose of Litecoin. That is the purpose of Litecoin. Yeah. There's these other wonderful things we can do with it now that we never could before, which are neat. I like them. I don't think we should turn them off or whatever. I mean, that's a poor language, but the cat's out of the bag. But whether you use it or not, I think the monetary, the exchange, person to person,
It's
point of
very boring, I
sale.
know,
But that's the main reason we're here. So Core
right.
having that through the
Mm.
foundation, your wallet through the foundation, supporting mainly the monetary expansion or the ease of use as a money makes total sense to me. I'm not surprised with your answer. And the good news is
Okay.
other wallets will incorporate that, maybe
That's it.
gather that space,
Mhm.
and that'll be their niche, right? But I don't think every
Yeah,
wallet needs to support it. I don't think most people are going to use it.
yeah. Well,
So
I would also say the other thing that people don't understand as well, which is, so when I go on Reddit and people say, like, they complain about something that's not there, and like, well, no, and I say, hey, and they say, oh, Electrum's better. I'm like, oh, okay, go use Electrum. Like, I'm not trying to own the space. But here's the thing that people don't understand.
yeah.
Electrum last release was 2 years ago. Okay. When I'm in the space again, I've been traveling and everything, but typically we'll do about 4 to 6 releases per month
Mm-hmm.
on Lightwall. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And people say, oh, it's no big deal. It's a huge deal because every time we do a release, we have to now create the binary, go to the store, change all of the language parameters, go in the metadata and the store, all that kind of stuff that's not really technical, but it needs to be updated. We have to do all that stuff. So it's not it's something that people say, oh well, no, that's how you publish mobile apps. You have to keep an eye on that stuff. That's how you can get 4.5 stars in iOS. And by the way, we've never paid for reviews, right? And the reason why is because the noise of putting paid reviews in there would remove the key thing, which people go in there and they'll put 1 stars and we'll say, hey, we want to find out what's going on in that,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is what we're doing. We're trying to produce something that people want, and when
Mm-hmm.
it's not doing the way they want it to, we want to find out why. And if it's something we can fix quickly, we'll do it. If it's something that it's kind of like, oh, I wish, we want to put that in there too. I invite everyone to go into the repos and write an issue about what you would like to do, right? And we will look at that. And I think people don't realize, like, that's kind of that's the meat and potatoes of doing this stuff. So yeah.
Very good. Very good. In terms of users using Lightwallet,
Mm-hmm.
it is self-custodial. You've already made the statement. You don't control any of that. They've got their own 12 words. They've got their C's. They've got to secure that and
Mm-hmm.
keep and be responsible for ultimately the security of their Litecoin. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what about just their data? If they come to you, clearly there's some metrics you can see and some
We do, yeah.
analytics you have. Can you just kind of maybe provide some confidence
What
about
that is?
like what do you
Yeah.
do with the
So
data, anything like that? Yeah.
yeah. So I'm a big data nerd, and fortunately, in the iOS space, Apple are really, really particular about not leaking personally identifiable information, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they already don't want to do it. Now, most mobile apps, the way they really get in trouble in terms of privacy is they ask people to ask where they are, right? They ask for their email address.
Mm-hmm.
They ask some stuff that Google loves, that stuff, right? You'll see that. And I think we kind of toe the line. What we do is we put a lot of data, and you can look at the code and see what we're doing. What we'll do is we'll say, like, oh, someone started a sync. So here's a timestamp and here's how it finished. And then we send that to Google Firebase and see how long that takes. Or, oh, someone opened the app, right? We don't have any visibility on. We might get a, like, what's it called, a UUID, which is basically a randomly generated ID, but we don't track. We don't have anything to track it. It's all sitting there in Google, and I can't even look at that stuff. In fact, you want something that's very, very clean. It's data. It's real, but you don't know where it is. You just know, like, maybe it's in this country. So we're really big on that stuff because it helps us really understand how to make the app better. But we don't collect anything. In fact, we have a thing where we put a new view in there where you can say, oh, please sign up, right? And people can not sign up, but that's not even in the app. That's actually a web view. And it goes, if you go to the website, lightwallet.io and you scroll down, it'll pop. It's the same thing, right? And even then you can put, as long as it's an email that you feel like it's something you can respond to, that's all we care about. And just, I don't want to ramble too much, but we did a giveaway for Bit Refill a few months ago. I don't know if you saw this or heard about this.
Yep.
And I said, like, I feel very strongly not to give people Litecoin because it sets a poor expectation for people. But I don't mind giving people a reward if they're using the app and they're talking. So we were doing a $100 gift card to Bit Refill, right? And we said, hey, just go in there and put in an email address, and we do it. And so we pulled the data, got the emails, and say like, oh, you won, just let us know. And do you want us to put on their Twitter or whatever? I went through 10 people, no responded. So I feel like okay, I failed. So this is when you step out of that. Okay, we don't want any information from people, and now it's like, okay, I want an email address. Let's see if we can get an email address. And when we did it, it's like, no, we want to give you $100 gift card. No one responded. It was so funny, and so we're reevaluating that because we want to do the gift. We want to get the gift cards. They're really good. I use Bit Refill quite a bit. Shameless plug.
Yeah.
But they work. My people are all over the world, and so like if I want to give them an attaboy or something like that for for coffee or whatever, it's very easy to do, right? Or for people, sometimes I have consultants. We just did the layout, and so I gave people like $20. Like, hey, can you go over this and tell us what's going on? It's a nice kind of thing to do, and Bit Refill does a really good job for that. So. But ironically enough, when I first did it, like no one responded to it. So we're going to do it again. We're going to do more giveaways. It's going to be Bit Refill giveaways. And so hopefully we'll have a better traction next time when we do it.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, you have to kind of release some data if you want to receive something physical in real life. We've had some very strange orders come into our shop where it's like, I know we agree with your privacy. We agree with confidentiality, but this is a person to person. I need to deliver you something. So please let me know how to contact you. I need an address if we're going to use a mailing system. I don't know if it's your sister's, your uncle's, or a PO box. It doesn't matter to me, but I need something to mail to. So this is just fascinating in our space, I think.
It is. And here's a funny thing about this too. And I know you can cut a lot of this stuff out. I don't care, but we get people that they hear about Litewallet or they hear about Litecoin, they go in there, they start playing around with it. They're not technically astute, right? And we've had this happen, especially in the last like 2 months when we had this really uptick of new users. People give us seed words. Please do not give us your seed words. We do not want your seed words. We've literally had people give us seed words. Wow. We're like, no. Because if you can imagine, it's like someone flashing you. You know, you don't want that information. You don't want it in your mind and everything like that. So we have a lot of work to do to educate people on what's going on. And even though I keep telling them, please keep your 12 words, keep them safe, keep them at your mom's house, whatever, people don't get it. So we need a better message on that. And I think that correlates with the MWEB message and like saying like, what is privacy? Some people don't understand what it is. Like you said, some people are really way on the long tail and some people are on the other tail. And I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, I had a guy send us a copy of his driver's license.
Wow.
I'm like, why? Yeah. I don't get when we don't.
Well, that's what exchanges ask for, personal ID and everything else, the KYC thing, but you're not a KYC platform, right? Yeah. So it's interesting how we're kind of trained in the traditional system to just produce all this one. Good news is Litewallet isn't asking for this.
We're not we don't ask for any personal information. If we do ask, it'll be like an email address. And then you don't have to put it, and there's a lot of tricks where you can have it. Apple has a thing where you can put a hide my email so you can get it and not actually. So there's no reason for that, especially in our day and age. So
yeah. Well, very good. This has been excellent. I really, I think I learned a lot. I think we've got a lot to look forward to and a lot we have now, right? So I look forward to seeing you at the summit in July, which is already here. Shoot, it's July 2nd. So later this month.
I
And
need to do my travel.
yeah,
I was working on it this morning. Yeah.
correct. So we'll see you there. Again, friends, we can find Kerry on X at Big Kerry Tweets. Light Wallet is also there. Just kind of in closing, I'll just kind of give you the last word here. Any way we can help you? How do we find you? What can we do to kind of
I
discover
think,
more about Light
yeah,
Wallet?
yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I think, again, we are trying to go towards more traditional, if you want to say outside of the crypto space. So if anyone listening is using Instagram, we're really using Instagram quite a bit because we think it resonates with people that are not really tech savvy. And if you're using it, it's lightwallet.app, right? And please follow us there. We're trying to grow. We have a whole 117 followers. Twitter's doing well, but we really want the non-tech folks to tell us what's wrong so that we can fix it, so we can make it easier for them to use it. So if you guys are listening, please check it out and follow us. And that's the main thing.
Well, very good. We'll leave it at that. We're glad to have you. And maybe a final plug for the foundation, litecoin.net/summit. The tickets are $84. No, this is not a paid promotion, but I very much support what the foundation does. And I'll be there. Kerry will be there. A lot of folks in the Litecoin community will be there who are building or doing various things. And I think it's a great community opportunity if you can get to Nashville. I know not everybody can, but I think $84 is a pretty reasonable price. And if you want to, you can hang out with the Bitcoiners later in the week. I won't be, but it's in the same town. So anyway, with that, we'll let it go. Kerry, again, thank you so much for coming on the show. See you
Thanks
later.
for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You bet.